not like $80 to place one on $200 to get the set. Most of the trade me $80 to place one of them.
$80 to replace one of them?
Or something like that. It was absurd, something like that, Eric.
How much is the set?
Set is like maybe for AirPods Pro it's 190 or 200 something, I forget. But for like a set of regular AirPods, I think they're like 150 or 120. Maybe they charge you less for the regular now. When they first came out, they charged $80 per place. I don't know. Something like that. That's what I heard.
So that's the advantages of like being the only one selling AirPods.
The only thing that can repair them will replace them, not even repair. Basically, if you bring the totals, they're replacing the entire unit.
Oh yeah, we were talking about books because we were thinking, I described the short story we read. When I was reading it, it kind of felt like Slaughterhouse-Five, minus all the aliens and the future stuff. It felt like it was really jumping all over the place.
Yeah, it took me a long time and a few reads to realize, to like start kind of, there's a lot of different, like very different threads happening. You know, he's in his past, he's talking to his wife, he's talking about Alaska. I feel like it feels very all over the place at first, yeah.
But it's not even that long, and it feels it's weird reading that.
Have you ever read it? Sorry.
Just that it probably took me. So I've read Jim Shepard's book, which is called Like You'd Understand Anyway. I've probably read it like 3 times now, and because it's one of my faves. But it probably took me until around like the third. And I've been teaching that story for a long time, so I've read that story probably 10 times. And I feel like it took me like 3 or 4 reads to be like, oh, I see how this is sort of starting to form together. So we'll talk about that today.
Have you ever read a short story called The Most Dangerous Game?
Oh yeah,
It's like the one where
back in high
he goes-
school.
The one where he goes to the island and like the dog chases him. Dude, yeah, that was interesting. I read that in high school. You know they made a movie out of that in the 30s?
Yes, I did. I think it had one of the big shots back then in it.
Yeah, like had the girl that was in Kong, the woman that was in King Kong, I think was in it.
Faye Dunaway.
No, Faye Ray was there.
Faye Ray, thank you, Faye Ray.
Like, I mean, the original 30s King Kong.
Yeah. I have seen that movie probably like 25 times. When I was a little kid, I loved King Kong, Creature from the Black Lagoon, shit like that. Yeah.
It's so funny and bad. It's great today.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Joe Frankenstein.
Yep, that was on the list too.
The cinematography in that is just like amazing, even with the shadows and everything. Didn't even need color. Basically, the fact that colorize that, you're ruining the movie.
Say that again?
It's basically so good that if you try to colorize it, you ruin the whole point of the movie.
Oh, I see here. All right, people are still joining the stream, which started up a little bit late, so we're gonna take a minute.
Also, the most dangerous game movies in public domain.
Oh, fun.
They're not copyrighted. Well, it's copyright expired.
While we're talking about like old ass black and white movies from the 20s, did you ever see, or not necessarily from the 20s, but did you ever see Metropolis?
No, but I've heard of it. It's that German one, right?
Watch fucking Metropolis. Yes, that is probably, if I had to pick a favorite movie, I might pick Metropolis.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I've not really seen much silent film, but I will see that. I've heard cool things about it.
What a film. Like, it was the most expensive movie ever made by like a factor of 5 when it was first made.
Wow.
Like,
inflation, it must be pretty amazing.
oh, it must have been insane. And like, so it was the most expensive movie ever made by like 5 times. And then the warehouse burned down and Fritz Lang like lost a bunch of film and had to just like redo the whole thing. And he was like, all right. He was a crazy man. And he built an entire, he needed this like scene where an underground city would like flood.
Right.
And
so he built the whole model and flooded it.
Yeah. And so he built, but he realized like, I needed to look like the small models weren't working. And he was like, I need it to look real. I need like people running through the streets. Like I need this like rebellion look to it. So he built a cardboard city that is like many stories tall and just like had these shots of like people sprinting through it and stuff. Crazy.
That's cool.
Oh yeah. And it's like one of the last it's one of the last like silent films, and so it's really like dancerly. It feels very choreographed. Everyone's talking with their bodies. It's a totally strange and awesome movie.
And then like World War II happened, and they didn't have any more stuff films in Europe.
Yup. Chris, Matt, thank you.
1927, I heard that.
The stream is very popular today. I also talk about it a bunch because I bartended for a year in Columbus, and it was at the bar was at a movie theater. And we would play silent films on a screen, just like sort of on repeat. And so I've seen Metropolis probably like 200-300 times just as it was working. All right, let me make sure I've got everybody here. Ryan, Russell. Dude, every time I looked up, I was like, that is a great shot. Like every shot is fucking nice.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie from World War II. You've ever seen Casablanca?
I've actually never seen Casablanca.
You've never seen Casablanca?
No, I watched. What's the other one that everyone says is the greatest one?
What?
The one with Rosebud. Citizen Kane. I've seen Citizen
You've
Kane,
never seen that?
but not Casablanca.
Watch Casablanca. That's a good one.
Okay,
Humphrey Bogart and Ingmar Bergman one. That's a good one.
I'm definitely supposed to. I think eventually I'll watch all the ones that people say are the greatest because there's a finite number.
Yeah.
Might as well get them out of the way. Okay, stream is popular today, and it's 8:09. All right, we should go for it. But my document's not loading. All right, so if you're late to the chat, you have a minute. God damn. So part of what makes me really salty about this, having to buy a new laptop, is that I bought a Chromebook in 2014, and it was $170, and it lasted me until this year.
Well, that's pretty decent.
It was great, right? I was like, this is a workhorse. Like, this thing's awesome. And I bought this thing this year, and I don't know why it's crapping out, but it's really acting like a $170 laptop. And I'm super salty about
Chromebooks
it.
are good if you're not doing much with them. If you're just doing online work and you're not really using your computing power, that's fine.
Yeah, maybe the streaming is what's killing it, honestly.
Probably the streaming, because the Chromebooks aren't really good for streaming, because that's to go through an online server. But
All right, let me just get these documents loading. Damn, this thing is really struggling today. I don't want this to affect the class quality, so I'm just going to wait for everything to load up. All right, well, while I'm waiting, I'm going to hit you with a fun fact. I want to know, both in the chat and in class, how much of the internet do you think is indexed by Google? How much of the internet is Googleable?
Oh, Googleable?
Yeah. If you had to just pick a ballpark percentage.
like, I think I've seen the pictures of like an iceberg. You ever seen that picture, I know?
Okay, so Mike Norton's got an idea. So hold on to yours for a
I'm not
moment.
gonna say it, 'cause I know people don't.
You're less than 10.
Less than 10. Okay. Yeah.
I guess it would be that a lot of those are just like personal websites.
10. There's a lot of. Oh my God, more people are joining the chat too.
On the dark web and everything, the deep web, and that's the hidden stuff
Yeah.
that you don't want to go to unless
10, 10. So here are the guesses in the chat. 10, 10, 5, 70, 15, 5, 5. It's like 0.00002 or some shit like that.
Really?
Yeah. Which makes me wonder, like, what the hell is the rest of the internet?
Oh, the dark web is huge.
Yeah,
that's
like,
massive.
The internet's so the internet is like 99.9999% dark. That's what you're telling me.
There's also the
There's a
deep
deep
web.
web and
There's a deep web and a dark web. That's true. So it's that much deep, I guess.
The deep web is like subscription services and hidden stuff that you can like sign up for.
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. The
It's
dark web is
terrifying.
also the crime stuff. That's kind of hidden.
When I taught, I think in general, this is one of the differences I'm noticing between. So I taught at a state school before I came here
Right.
at Ohio State, and like everyone there, when I taught intro to writing, when I asked that question, they were like, "Oh, probably like 95%." Like unanimously, they were like, "Oh, at least 60." Like 60 would be weird, and I was like, "Dog, like you have no idea what's in there."
You probably weren't engineering school, was kind of more techy, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, more techie too. This is the only school I've ever been at where like you can watch. Like I watched a kid on my first day working here. I think I watched a kid like ride to class on a skateboard that he was controlling on his phone. And I was like, okay, I'm at a tech school. All
Yeah.
right, chat, slow down. I'm trying to get your names. Sam Unferth is here. Okay, I've got Sam, Chris, Matt, Justin. Cool. Okay, everyone's here. All right, I really need this stuff to stop breaking down. Otherwise, we're just going to have to improv today. I don't want to have to do that.
Just kidding, that's impossible.
All right, we're going to read these two poems, and then I'm going to close this document to try to give my computer some rest. All right, so today is our last day talking about writing the natural world, and we're going to talk some about the relationship between us and the natural world and what exactly that means. And so I've got these two poems here while my computer tries to reload them again. This is super sad. They are both called Passage, and they are by a woman named Margaret Gibson, out of her book, Not Hearing, I think it's called Not Hearing the Night Thrush. But it has a bunch of poems in it. It's all poems about nature, and it has a bunch of poems in it called Passage that sort of fit in between the sections. And so this is two of those that I'm going to read back to back. So this is called Passage. And then a bird flew into my body and nested in the cuff of my shoulder. This is the mystery of pain. I hear the wind differently now. I breathe, and my ribs are the cirrus of clouds. There's a river in my wrist. Daily I practice eclipse, though ordinary loss will do. At night, I ripen beneath a hush of stars. All right, so that's the first one. Second one, also called Passage. Once in sunlight, I pinned to the clothesline a cotton sheet, a plane of light as sheer as the mind of God. Before we imagined that mind creased by a single word. With my hand, I smoothed any rivel, any stir, any suggestion of pleat or furrow. Whatever it was I wanted from that moment, I can't say. It failed to edify, nor did I bow. And yet the memory holds, and the joy that recurs in me, such as the scent of summer abides in air-dried sheets I unfold long after, lying down in them as one might in a meadow, as one might with a lover, as one might court the infinite, however long that takes. So the reason I like these poems is because, and they're out of, I think they're also out of Best American Poetry 2017, but the reason I like these poems is because they signal to me this weird conundrum that to me always exists between the finite and the infinite, between like the scrutable, limited human body and the expansiveness of the world or universe. And the problem that we encounter when we, material, literal people, try to understand like the namelessness of consciousness, the namelessness of suffering, the namelessness of anything, really, when we try to cross this weird gap between language and perception, but also the gap between perception and reality. And there's this potential for these distances to feel tremendously lonely, but you can experience a lot of joy in trying to cross them at the same time, right? And so we're sort of covered in paradoxes here when we work with something as insufficient as language. And this is not a poem just about nature, but it's also about a person's experience of nature and about the grandeur of an idea like spirituality, but also about the like reality and the mundanity of a person trying to reach for it. This is also why I asked you to read Pleasure Boating in Lituya Bay for today. One of the things that I think that story makes it like really infinitely readable is the way that the narrator just like can't say what he's afraid of. Like, I think in some ways, if the narrator had the ability to just like say in one sentence the thing that he's most afraid of, I think the whole story would fall apart. Like the story's energy comes from what he specifically is trying to get at and can't quite say. And I was going to read the first couple paragraphs of it, but my computer's having such a hard time that I think I'm going to skip that part. But like he's getting a secret vasectomy, and he's like crying immediately after having sex with his wife, and like he's obsessing about the tsunami in Alaska, and he can't quite pull all of these things together in order to describe his fear, which seems to be about having children, right? He doesn't. He's secret vasectomy, right? He seems to have this fear about having children that he can't quite express, and so all of these things are there, and you can sense that they're there, and there's this sort of, and Jim Shepard gets a lot of mileage out of his character talking around that problem, you know? And so Wednesday, I went off a little on how like all things within our scope of possible description are encompassed by the natural world. And I do believe that. And I talked about how like, even if we cast stones outward, like if we write about aliens on alien planets with alien problems, we're still chained to our only point of reference, which is the natural world. And so today I want to talk about another one of these limiting factors, because I think it's not only do I think it's useful to demarcate the limits of our perception, on Wednesday, I think one of the things I was doing when I was talking about how total the natural world is I was talking about the limits of our perception, what we can't and can see and depict. But I also kind of feel like, in some ways, that these limits of perception are, in a way, like all we have. And I don't know if people still watch the Truman Show, but think about in the Truman Show when he sails out in this little boat out onto the ocean, and he sails toward the sky, and then he realizes that the sky is actually a painted wall, and it has always been a painted wall, and there's like a door in it. Think about how much bigger his world gets in that moment. When he realizes that when he encounters the truth finally and gets to walk through the door. It's not that his world gets smaller, it's that it enlarges, it becomes something totally different, right? And so I think it's useful, this is all to say, that it's very useful to talk about limits. And so we're going to talk about limits today. And what limit am I talking about? I think the thing that I always come back to, especially in nature, and I've said this before, I'm always going hiking and stuff like that, and I think a lot about the limit of the self, or the fact that when I interact with nature, I am always the one interacting with nature. The lens is always me, and that you can't perceive anything outside of this field of color and shadow that's very stuck to your visual field, and your thoughts and feelings will never leave. I'm gonna soften this blow in a minute, but your thoughts and feelings are never gonna leave that dark, wet box that's just perched on your neck, right? And so before you go thinking this is weird or dark or bad, I would like to remind you that your good-bad scale also exists within this system and can't exist outside of it, which means that you can't judge this fact as good or bad. It comes before your feelings of good or bad, and it encompasses them as well. So to judge consciousness as good or bad would be like trying to zero the scale while you're still standing on it. You can't get a true reading. It only is, and we're incapable of judging it. Okay, I'm gonna come down out of the clouds for a second, because this is kind of my tangent. But the next question is what does it mean for writing? And for me, it means that these paradoxes, these problems, these weird encounters of world and consciousness, the bigness of the world, the smallness of my own consciousness. If you're looking, you can find these problems manifesting everywhere, all the time, in everyday questions and struggles and interactions, and that our perception of things like beauty or heroism pretty much depend on these limitations. And it means that in your writing, and in writing like Jim Shepard's story for today, the collision of the grand and the mundane is one of the best ways to generate something interesting or to notice and explore compelling problems. I keep thinking about, so I was going to read the first couple paragraphs of Pleasure Boating in Latuya Bay, and I think about them sometimes. There was an earthquake, and a sheet of earth and ice the size of a city block fell into the ocean, and it made a wave that was thousands of feet tall. And a lot of the story is just one dude horrified by that fact. He's oh my God, it made a half-mile tall wave. When he tries to do when he says drop a football in the bathtub and imagine that the space here is 2,000 feet and then scale it up proportionally. It's sort of mind-bending in a way. And I love that sense that we get of the small looking at the large. You can get tons of energy out of that, right? And then you can root it in something like children. You can root it in something very natural, very mundane at the same time. So I think one of the things, so I called today, You Are Always the One in Nature. And I think that what I want to do is try to generate some kind of interplay between the self and with nature. And I can't take you outside and go, out to the trees or whatever. But we are going to do a writing exercise. So pull your notebooks out if you haven't already. Oh, I hope we have enough time. So like we've done before, first we are going to pick a natural place and put ourselves there. Again, try to pick a place that you have not chosen before in here. And I'm going to ask you to describe it for a while, bringing in all the details that you can. Excuse me. And I'm also going to ask you to bring in that white space as well. But maybe unlike before, try to keep your descriptions rooted in the first person, as in try to foreground the self that is looking at the things, looking at the forest or desert or whatever. I see the mesa stretching out before me, stuff like that. Kind of like that poem about lying in a hammock at William Duffy's farm. The first person perspective is going to be important for in a moment. So try not to lose that. So keep it rooted in the I. All right, we're going to go for 6 minutes. Timer, 6 minutes. About a minute and a half left. Start finishing up your sentence. Okay. So now that you've described for a while, I'm going to ask you to keep describing and try to let these details about the place lead you into a statement that expresses the mood. Maybe you notice the grand allegro rhythms in the river of your scene, or the golden diagonal light brings about a sense of peace. And these things lead you to express a feeling, whatever it is. Try to lock onto the mood and then say it. And if you have to read over your description to do so, do so. But we're going to do this for only 4 minutes. Go for it. About a minute left. Okay. Oh, I started doing this so naturally. Okay, cool. So I want you to take this mood and carry it inward. And what I mean by that is think about a problem that's been on your mind for a while, or a worry that you have, or a lesson that you can sense forming at the edge of your knowledge. Write about this problem or discovery. And don't struggle too hard to connect it with the natural setting. They're already implicated together by being in the same document, same train of thought. But ruminate on this problem or sense or feeling for a while. We're going to do this for 7 minutes. About a minute left. Okay, last stop. Now, finally, go back to one of the details of the natural setting in which you put yourself. Perhaps a detail that you featured, I'm going to start over. Finally, go back to one of the details in the natural setting in which you put yourself, a detail that you featured at the first step of this activity. This time, I want you to find something new in that detail. And in order to bring yourself back, maybe you even do so directly, like, I keep coming back to the sight, sound, or smell of blank. That's totally fine. And if you find yourself expanding or trailing away from that detail and into other details about the setting, feel free to do so. You'll have time. We're going to do this for about 7 minutes. So return now to the details of the setting. And as you write, try to notice, now that you've let the natural world sort of take you into your own thoughts and emotions, what can you notice about your featured natural world that maybe you didn't the first time you encountered or envisioned it? Or rather, how has your place in the natural world changed as a result of the trip it invited you to take into your own thoughts? 7 minutes, go. About a minute left. Okay. Unfortunately, we are like at time, so I have to let you go. But we can talk about this more on Monday, and I will see you then. And have an excellent weekend.